What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 308 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2019. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And I just tweeted this yesterday. I just tweeted this last night how at one point I thought, you know what? With nothing airing on Tuesdays anymore, SmackDown moving to Fridays earlier this month, maybe I can start recording the show ahead of time, like early on Thursday nights or Tuesday nights. That'd be great. That'd be awesome. And then NWA Power debuted. And then AEW Dark debuted. And then Impact is moving to Tuesdays. And then Total Divas airs at 10. And then we have WWE Backstage premiering on Tuesday nights on FS1 in a few weeks as well. So that's probably out of the question. My Tuesdays are likely more busy in terms of covering and watching wrestling, which is great. It's all stuff I enjoy. But it's probably more busy now than any other day of the week combined. At least Raw, Monday only has Raw to watch. Sometimes Ring of Honor, if it's up by then on early Monday mornings, I'll watch that and review it. Tuesdays, as documented. Wednesdays have NXT and AEW Dynamite. And yes, they do air simultaneously, but I can either watch one and then the other or at the same time. It's not too bad, and it's a little later on in the night, so that's not too bad. Thursdays are practically nothing. Thursdays are just, I think, NXT UK, from what I watch anyway. Thursdays, we have NXT UK in the afternoon, and then main event goes up on Hulu later that night. So not a ton of, really, that's probably the least amount of wrestling all week. And then Fridays are SmackDown. Saturdays and Sundays are nothing unless it's a pay-per-view weekend or a takeover weekend, whatever. Or there's, an Impact pay-per-view like Bound for Glory was last week, or a Ring of Honor show will sometimes air on a Saturday or on a Friday. Those aren't too bad. I usually do have to do catch-up work. Like last weekend, I was away all weekend from Friday morning through Sunday night, so I had a lot of work to catch up on by Monday. But that wasn't too bad. Tuesdays, though, if you're a big wrestling fan, I'm sure you love it, and I love it too. It's just a lot to keep track of. Like yesterday, I didn't watch the This Is Impact show live. I watched it after the fact, but Alexis came over. We watched most of the NWA show. I watched all of it. She caught the back end of it, but we watched the NWA Power show. Then we watched AEW Dark. Then we watched a little bit of This Is Impact and mostly Hocus Pocus, because my favorite holiday of the year is coming up in 8 days, Halloween, for those unaware. And I am going to be dressing up this year, so stay tuned for the pictures on my social media pages. We watched Hocus Pocus, and then we watched Total Divas at 10. And then I caught up on the rest of This Is Impact after she left, so it was a crazy Tuesday, and that's the way it's going to be going forward. But I appreciate you guys to go full circle here, sending in your questions nonetheless, on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. If you want to send in a question, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave your questions up on the post that usually goes up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So nonetheless, let's get started here with 308 here today. Joe M. first from YouTube. His first question was, normally I'd be skeptical of any NXT main roster call-up, especially with their history of the tag teams, but since the Street Profits actually main evented Raw in their debut, do you think they may actually see something in them? Honestly, yes, but then again, I thought the same exact thing with Enzo and Cass. No, so we watched NXT this week, Alexis and I, and she brought up how, wow, they're going to be really big in the main roster, and I had to correct her. Yeah, they could be big in the main roster. Anyone could be big on the main roster. I specifically agree with the Street Profits because I saw what they were capable of in NXT and how over they were with that audience, and especially when they won the tag titles. I was there back in Bridgeport in June at TakeOver 25. It was one of the greatest moments I've ever seen live. And that's something I never thought I would say for a random tag team title win, but that's how much I love the Street Profits, and that's how over they were at that point in NXT. That's just a few short months ago. But anyone can be big if WWE wants them to be big. You are absolutely right, though, that they don't have the greatest track record with tag teams. They either break up the tag teams, or I'm not really sure, they either break up the tag teams or they just don't really amount to the level of success that they should. Enzo and Cass probably being the most egregious example. Now, mind you, I have never said that they are great wrestlers. I've never once claimed that they were some amazing in-ring technicians. I have said their matches were entertaining because they have a connection, or did anyway. They had a connection with the crowd like no other. They went in there and had really good matches, some of the best NXT Tag Team title matches up to that point anyway, with the Revival in late 2015. They had some really good matches with, on the main roster, the Dudley Boys and a few other tag teams before they just kind of spiraled out of, out of popularity, I guess. But they were never great wrestlers. But Enzo and Cass, though, could have been called up, could have been the next best thing, really. They got that great reaction on the night after WrestleMania in 2016, right after WrestleMania 32. They were really, really over for a while. And from what I understand, they actually were doing really well merchandise-wise, to the point where even I bought an Enzo Amore t-shirt, and it's probably still here somewhere in my house that I'm using as as a dust rag or something. But they were really, really over. But WWE just didn't know how to book them. They lost, and they lost, and they lost, and they just weren't over anymore. It came to a point where no one cared about these guys. They should have won. Their last real straw was winning the Raw Tag Team titles at WrestleMania 33. But when the Hardy Boys came back, that went completely out the window. So hopefully the Street Profits don't suffer that same fate, because as soon as Enzo and Cass got called up, and they were never really singles competitors in NXT at any point. Cass was on his own for a little bit, like years ago, when Enzo Amore broke his, I think, leg, like in 2013, 2014. And Big Cass flew solo for a few months, which was fine, but they have always been way better as a tag team than they ever were apart. But you knew as soon as they called up Enzo and Cass, they had their sights set, WWE that is, on splitting those two up so they can make money off of Cass on his own. That's why they put him in that Universal Championship match all those years ago. When Kevin Owens won the title, Big Cass was in that match too. It was an elimination match, which is why he wasn't involved in the final fall. He was the first one out. But he did pretty well. But I've never once thought, oh my God, Big Cass, future world champion. The guy was never really that good. They kind of hit each other's weaknesses. I mean, Big Cass was never a great talker. Enzo kind of made up for that. Big Cass was a better wrestler than Enzo, but by, far from amazing, is what I'll say. The Street Profits, not to say they're not terrible on their own. Montez Ford, I gotta think that when they called these guys up to be the whole narrators of Raw a few months ago, that they had their sights set on pushing Montez Ford. Because the guy has the look, he can speak, he's got charisma, he can go in the ring, he can fly like nobody else can. That reminds me of their theme song lyrics. But nonetheless, they are much better together right now than they would be apart. Angelo Dawkins, they said on Raw this week, had been in the Performance Center, I think Dio Madden brought it up, for 7 years. 7 fucking years. And there's a reason for that. Because the guy was never anything interesting on his own. So I really, really hope they don't split him up. Or at least if they keep them together, they can be successful as a tag team. They're two guys that I could see being split up at some point because they have high hopes, no pun intended, for Montez Ford, given his amazing frog splash. But for right now, though, they can be really, really over as a tag team, and hopefully the most successful tag team to be called up to the main roster. Now, the Revival have since won 3 tag team titles, and that's great, but like American Alpha got broken up, Enzo and Cass got broken up, the Ascension were losers. Heavy Machinery's doing pretty well, but they have yet to win any tag titles. We've had the Vaudevillains, they went nowhere. We had the Lucha Dragons, they went nowhere. They were broken up within a year or two. Never won any tag titles on the main roster, which they probably should have, but they never did. So I really think with the Street Profits, I'm a big fan of theirs. I really hope they don't fuck this up with them, because they have something special with the Street Profits. People are reacting right now to the Street Profits. The fact they main evented Raw and won doesn't really mean much, because they could just take it all away next week by having them lose or fucking them up or making them look goofy or stupid. I'm not sure. Like Enzo and Cass, I'm not sure if they were writing their own material, but their promos after a while on the main roster just got abysmally bad, like atrociously bad. So I really hope they don't suffer the same fate. His next question: why do you think NXT is actually making Cameron Grimes look so dominant? Very little about him has really impressed me so far, other than the fact that he's a solid in-ring worker, but so is 95% of the roster. I certainly don't think he should be pushed over the likes of Shane Thorne and Raul Mendoza, and for all the crap that people give the Forgotten Sons, I don't see anything they don't have that this guy does. Honestly, I completely agree, and I know I'm not alone in this because I see a lot of people on my Twitter timeline saying the same thing that I do. What's the point of Cameron Grimes? I don't get it. Now, again, I'm one of those people that will come to the defense of a lot of people. I'm one of those type of fans that's a fan of like everybody, that wants to see everyone succeed, which is true. That, like, if there's a wrestler where people are saying, oh, I don't care about this guy, or I don't give a shit about this guy, I'll say, hey, I think they have potential. I think they can be something. Like Apollo Crews. He's been slept on for years now, but the guy was great. He still is very good. They've just done nothing with him for years now. And he has the fucking charisma of a vacuum, but still, I think the guy's really good and he could be something. Cameron Grimes, I'm not going to really come to the defense of, just because it doesn't make any sense to me. And I've said this for weeks now, and while live tweeting while watching NXT, it doesn't make any sense to me that they have Cameron Grimes out there pretty much every single week, but Jordan Miles, the actual winner of that NXT Breakout Tournament, is nowhere to be seen. That doesn't make any sense to me. And Jordan Miles is infinitely better. Now, he's not ready for the main event scene in NXT by any stretch either, but he's more entertaining. Not that he's better in the ring. I think they're both equally good in the ring, but I just find him a lot easier to root for than fucking Cameron Grimes. The top hat, I just don't get it. They're making him go in there, look dominant. He's beating people within seconds. Like, that's great. They're keeping the matches short so I don't have to sit through them. And like you said, the guy's a good wrestler, but my argument has always been as well, yes, but so is, like you said, 95% of the roster. What makes him stand out that Jordan Miles doesn't have? You know what I'm saying? Or anyone else, really, that it's not on NXT Weekly. I've seen pretty much everyone go through the NXT TV show on USA Network so far, except for Jordan Miles. What the fuck? The guy's really, really good, so I don't know. I don't really have an answer for you. I really don't know what they see in Cameron Grimes. I like Trevor Lee in Impact. I'm glad they signed him. He's a really good hand to have in the ring. And he was a former X Division champion over there, but he just kind of feels out of place in NXT because he doesn't have any charisma. He's never really excited me in any way outside of his matches. So I don't get the push either. I really don't. I don't know where it's going or why we should care. Maybe I would care more if we found out more about who he is and what his character is. I don't think I've heard the guy cut one promo in the last month on the USA Network. He's just gone in there and beaten guys. And that can work for certain people like, Damian Priest, who's, dominant and is way better in the ring, way more fun to watch in the ring than Cameron Grimes. But, I think I would say I know more about Damian Priest through the videos they put out on him and the promos they've had him cut and vignettes and stuff like that than Cameron Grimes. I know nothing about the guy, and that's part of the reason why I just don't care. His third question here, I thought it would be at least a month before I'd have to ask a question like this, but last week's show indicated otherwise. Should Drew Gulak go back to 205 Live? It's sad to see. It really sucks. The guy was on SmackDown for all of 4 days. He got drafted Monday, got beat and squashed, I should say, by the Big Show, not the Big Show, might as well be the Big Show, by Braun Strowman on Friday's SmackDown. It took all of 4 days for WWE to outright bury the guy. And it's so obvious that Vince has not been paying attention to what Drew Gulak's been doing now on 205 Live for the better part of 2019. The guy's been doing the best work of his career in 2019 on 205 Live. Leading up to WrestleMania, coming out of WrestleMania, the stuff he's done in NXT recently. He's been doing some great shit, and I completely agree with Solomonster's comparison that he's like the Dean Malenko of WWE in 2019. Absolutely, I think that's a great comparison. And it is so accurate, and he fits that role to a T. But to have him go back to doing the PowerPoint presentations, like it was entertaining and cute 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago, in 2019, after all the great work he's done as this serious shooter-like character, to have him go in there and just get beat in a minute and made to look like a complete fucking fool was such a waste of his talent. So if this is what they have in mind with the cruiserweights, then I have no desire to see them on the main shows. Granted, they are actually doing something with Humberto Carrillo. It's a tale of two careers right now. Carrillo, who never won the Cruiserweight Championship, he went for it a few times, never won it, faced the Universal Champion on Monday's Raw and looked good in defeat. It was a pretty good match. Drew Gulak, who's the Cruiserweight Champion for the last 3 or 4 months, lost in 2 minutes to Braun Strowman on SmackDown. So I'm not sure if it's a writing team issue or what the hell's going on. But I'd rather see Drew Gulak on Raw, or really back in NXT or 205 Live, that's what they have in mind for him. So, yeah, I guess we'll find out in due time if this is going to continue or if it's a one-off thing, but that's why you have people like Heath Slater. That's why people like that are on the roster, to go in there and get beat in 2 minutes. Not fucking Drew Gulak, who I'm not saying is going to be the next WWE champion. Like, the guy's not that great in terms of personality and stuff like that, but he is really, really good. and just to go in there and have him waste any momentum he's had up to this point, by having him go in there and lose to Braun Strowman in 2 minutes is just, it's a complete waste, and it's disappointing to see. Not surprising. I can't see, a lot of us didn't see this coming, but it is also very, it's a blow. It's a blow to morale for anyone who watches 205 Live, likes these guys, enjoys what they're doing, and wants to see more of it on the main shows, but then WWE will go ahead and just bury the cruiserweights. Not all of them, like Carrillo again did well on Raw this week, but Gulak, I have officially lost all hope they will utilize this guy properly on the blue brand. He teased the feud with Daniel Bryan on Twitter last week, which kind of got me thinking, like, oh, wow, that'd be really cool. Like, we're getting Bryan and Nakamura, which is great, but Bryan and Gulak, like, that could not only be a good match in terms of, like, a good feud in terms of the matches they could produce, but also a good feud in the fact that it could really help get Gulak over as a thing on SmackDown on his own. But they fucking squandered that by having him go in there and get beat in 2 minutes by Braun Strowman, so why even bother at this point? Elena the Y from YouTube, their first question was, or not first question, their only question this week. Their question was, because I keep forgetting to mention it, AEW Dynamite has been a fun new wrestling show, and I admire what they've been able to bring to the table so far. I just wish the show's main events were not so reliant on run-ins. I get why they do it, but I do wish wrestling promotions could think of more fresh and creative ways to draw heat than NWO-style interference. Am I being too cynical? What's your assessment of AEW Dynamite so far? I like the show. It's far from perfect. I've said that since day one. I thought the first week NXT had the better show, but for the past 2 weeks, and I said it 2 weeks ago partially because Alexis and RJ and myself were there, and we had a great time at AEW in Boston, but I was not at either show last week, and I still thought AEW had the better show of the two. And NXT had a really good show as well on Wednesday night, airing simultaneously on USA. But I think AEW, they just kind of have to get their format and their structure down pat. Like, just tighten it up. There's not a lot of issues with the product. The only real gripes that I have with the show are really nitpicks at the end of the day. By and large, they're creating storylines. They're setting up future matches. They're building towards the next pay-per-view. They're not giving away too many big money matches like Darby Allin and Chris Jericho was not a money match. So to do it on Dynamite as the main event for the world title, I think works. It works, and I thought it was a really good match. It was a great main event last week for Dynamite. Stuff like that. They're building up characters to an extent. They're doing more promo work and vignettes and and video packages, stuff like that, which I appreciate. The matches are great. So overall, the show is really, really good. But I do agree. I was kind of, I let it slide for week one because it's week one. They got to get over their new stable of the Inner Circle, whatever that's what they're called now, of Jericho and LAX and Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager. So anyway, I got it for week one. But if they're going to have every main event end in interference like it's a fucking episode of Monday Night Raw from 2015, then fans are going to sour on that show real quick. So again, it's only been a few weeks. They've only had 3 episodes. We'll revisit this question maybe in a few months from now and see if they're still doing it. Cody Rhodes is a smart guy. The Young Bucks are smart guys. They know what works in wrestling for the most part and what doesn't work. They've seen all the shows. I'm sure they've watched WWE. They hear the fans. They know what they don't like, what they don't want to see. What people don't want to see every single week is fucking interference. Jake Hager, the whole point of his character is to go in there and be a bodyguard for Chris Jericho, but if he's interfering constantly, yeah, it's giving the heels more heat, and I like that, but not every match has to have interference. There's really no reason for Jericho to utilize interference to beat a guy like Darby Allin, who is really good, and I'm glad they protected him in defeat. But truthfully, he could have gone in there and just looked really good in defeat without having to get attacked by, without having to get, attacked by Jake Hager halfway through the match or at the end of the match, He just could have gone in there, come within seconds of becoming AEW World Champion, and then tapped out. That could have been it. But they didn't do that. So hopefully that does not become a recurring theme on the show, because I totally agree. It's so NWO-esque, and I'm not a fan of it. The more they do it, the less creative it is, and the less original it is. And it is a new promotion, so I'm giving them some leeway for right now when it comes to that type of stuff. But if we're still seeing this week after week after week, a month from now, again, that's a real issue that should be addressed, because, it comes off as NWO light or Monday Night Raw light, because we see enough of that shit in other promotions. For every promotion to do that constantly is just fucking lazy. Matt Reborn again, John Ritland. Check him out here on YouTube. Real Honesty with John Ritland. Great channel, great content. His first question was, so WWE is reportedly paying Tyson Fury $15 million for this crown jewel stuff. If true, isn't that about $15 million too high? Seriously, they could be doing so much more with that money. So the reason they're paying him that much, absolutely without a doubt, is because it's on the Saudi Arabia show. WWE is making so much money off of this deal with Saudi Arabia over the next 10 years or so, with the 2 shows a year that they're doing currently, that it doesn't even matter to them. This is chump change. $15 million, that's nothing. For the near $1 billion they're making off of this deal with Saudi Arabia, $15 million is nothing. So I completely agree. Is it too much money? $50 million? Oh, fucking yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a waste. I mean, I like Tyson Fury. The guy feels like a genuine fan, that he likes what he's doing right now with Braun Strowman. The build of the match has left a lot to be desired in terms of, it's Braun Strowman. The guy's lost so many important matches over the last 2 or 3 years that it's hard to care about him anymore. But that being said, Tyson Fury is an attraction. I'm excited to see how he'll fare in the ring. I've heard some good things about him in the Performance Center via reports and stuff like that. So I am cautiously optimistic as far as how he'll do in the ring. But $15 million is ridiculous. That's twice of what Brock Lesnar's contract is. And even that's a lot of money, But again, they're doing that because it's Saudi Arabia. It's Crown Jewel. They have the money to spare. That's why they bring in so many legends for these shows. Think of all the people that have been on these Saudi Arabia shows over the last year and a half, since they did their first one in Saudi Arabia in April of 2018. Think of all the people they have paid to come in to do these shows. In the last year and a half alone, and I might have said this last week, but they've had Shane McMahon, Chris Jericho, remember that? He was in that Battle Royal last year. Today, I think that's his final WWE match, which is kind of funny. They've had Chris Jericho, Shane McMahon, The Undertaker, John Cena, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kane, Goldberg. I'm sure there's more I'm not thinking of, but those are all the main ones. And many, many more. Big Show, I think, was on one of them. They've had a lot of big stars, figuratively and literally, on these Saudi Arabia shows for the last year and a half. And they've probably spent millions bringing these people in because a lot of these people don't want to be on these shows. But they're there because WWE wants to make it feel like the WrestleMania that's not in the spring, the WrestleMania of the fall, the WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia, which it's not because the shows are just terrible. And yeah, WrestleManias can be terrible, but for the last 3 Saudi Arabia shows that they've done, they've all either been completely forgettable, completely missable, or just downright deplorable. So again, the $15 million, is it a way too much money, an excessive amount of money? Absolutely. Am I surprised? Not at all. Just considering the amount of money they're already making from this deal, they have the money to spare. I'm not saying they should spare it on Tyson Fury, but we'll see how much money they make off the show, really. Will it garner more interest in the product? Will it help Raw and SmackDown? Will Tyson Fury help boost ratings for Raw and SmackDown? So far, I haven't seen it. I mean, it's cool to see him involved. I wasn't really aware of who he was before he came into WWE. But again, he comes across like a genuine fan. So I'm not going to sit here and shit all over him, say, oh, he shouldn't be here. He sucks. He's not a real fan. He's not one of us. I hate that fucking mentality with wrestling fans, which is why we're so looked down upon by other people and other fandoms and stuff like that, is because if someone comes into the WWE world that's not one of our own, our immediate instinct is to shit all over them. But a lot of these people don't realize he's a genuine fan of the product. And that's so fucking rare. A lot of people, with the way that Raw and SmackDown are right now, a lot of people should be shitting on WWE. More celebrities should be saying, hey, this shit sucks. It's very rare to come across someone like a Tyson Fury, who's a mainstream star, who actually enjoys the product. God bless him. God bless him, because it feels like the only people who are left that actually enjoy the WWE and what they're doing right now are the hardcores, or the people that have been there through thick and thin for the last 10, 15, 20 years, if not longer. So it's cool to see a real big name be involved with WWE that enjoys what they're doing and they're not just doing it for the money. But is that a lot of money? Absolutely. Just because the guy is a fan does not mean he's worth $15 million. But again, it's WWE. They have the money to spare, so they'll waste it on stuff like this. His second question, in regards to NWA Power, Do you think, or what do you think rather, of them using tweets and clips from fans reacting to their show? Is it a good marketing strategy, and could other promotions follow suit? Well, first of all, I got to give a shout out to John. I was watching NWA Power last week, episode 2, on YouTube, and I was watching it with Alexis, actually, and we were waiting for the show to start, and we see John pop up in the tweets and videos that they were showing. They showed a video of John's review of the first episode of NWA Power, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty fucking cool. We were elated to see John on the screen, so I think it's cool. I think it's really cool that they're using tweets and they're using videos. You know, it generates buzz. I wouldn't argue that it makes them look second rate or something like that. With WWE, I mean, WWE kind of does that too, to be honest with you, or at least they used to. I'm not really sure if they do the ticker anymore. They used to, but like at the bottom of their screen, like at the bottom of the Raw screen, when they had the ticker of the tweets with people talking about Raw or the pay-per-view, whatever, it would say like, oh, Undertaker versus Goldberg, what an amazing match. Like, you know, they would include tweets like that all the time. It was really nothing out of the ordinary for WWE to do that all the time, to include tweets, and not in the way that NWA Power does it. They show the actual visual of the tweet and not just what the tweet said. But WWE's done that before. I like it with the NWA, though, because, you know, it gives you something to watch before the show starts and not just a fucking countdown. But it's also a relatively new promotion. I mean, NWA's been around forever, but NWA Power is a relatively new show. People are just starting to talk about it, getting the word out there, showing the videos, showing the tweets. I like that. I really do. I feel like Impact used to do something similar. I feel like I've seen that somewhere before. But it is a cool idea. And they're not just people drinking the Kool-Aid like, oh, wow, like Goldberg and Undertaker, what an amazing match. Like, I can see the WWE 10-year-olds and people that just don't really know any better saying shit like that. But, like, you would have the diehard TNA fans say, wow, this Claire Lynch angle, one of the best they've ever done. Wow, this is just amazing. In this case, it's justified because the NWA Power shows are actually really, really good. And people they're not just saying good stuff about the show to blow smoke up their ass. They mean what they say, and the show is really something fresh. It's something new. It's something innovative, and I enjoy that. So I'm glad they use the tweets and the videos. I don't know how long it's going to last. They might stop doing it at some point, but for right now, I think it's a cool little touch, and it gives me something to watch or look forward to on the countdowns before the shows begin on YouTube. His next question: what do you think AEW can do to create more buzz for their women's division? There's some good talent signed already, but something seems to be missing. I completely agree. RJ and I, when we left Double or Nothing in May back in Vegas, or in Vegas back in May, one of our biggest, gripes and nitpicks about the show, for as good as it was, and the matches were amazing, and they introduced some really cool characters, at least with the men, one of our biggest nitpicks of the show was their women's division. They can't just build around Britt Baker and have that be it. I know she's not the current AEW Women's Champion. That's Riho. But again, with Riho, and I've said this before, I did a whole video about it. We talked all about it, Alexis and I did, on Wrestle Rant Radio about 2 weeks ago when we were on our drive home from AEW Dynamite. Because it was, it was applicable 5 months ago. It's applicable now. Their women's division is absolutely their biggest weakness right now. That is something they have to work on. Britt Baker, being the biggest star they have in that women's division, is not good. Because Britt Baker, she comes across like a star. She has the look of a star. She can talk. She's not great in the ring, though. Baker and Riho was not a good match. It really wasn't. It was fine, but it was really not that good. Riho is great. Probably one of the best women's wrestlers in the world, if you ask a lot of people. But I know nothing about her. Oh, she's a Joshi woman. She's amazing. Well, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a shit. I don't watch Stardom. I know nothing about this woman. Is she good? Yeah, from what I've seen, she's really good. But I don't think I've heard her cut one promo. If she can't speak English, then get a fucking translator. Like, there's no excuse to not know more about this woman after 5 months. She's been here for 4 or 5 months now. We should know more about the AEW Women's Champion. Don't put her in the ring for a week. Have her go out there. Not even go out and cut a promo. Just do a sit-down interview, similar to what they did with Cody a few weeks ago, if not last week. That interview, that video package, that highlight reel of sorts for Cody, focusing on him and his journey to become the AEW World Champion, was tremendous. Why can't we see more of that with people like Riho, who I don't know anything about whatsoever? So that's an issue. And the well runs dry after that. Awesome Kong is good, but we've seen none of her in the last couple of weeks on Dynamite. I don't know what her deal is. We've seen nothing of Awesome Kong. She's well past her prime anyway, but, she's a good name to have, but she's not a woman to build around. Nyla Rose just sucks. I'm sorry. I mean, you can defend her, and that's fine, but I'm not a fan of hers at all. It's just the fact that she's not good. She's just not good. I've yet to see a passable women's match from Nyla Rose. The Riho match was good in the end, but for the most part, that match was just nothing special. Who else do they even have? I don't even know. Allie just has done nothing for me since she came over to AEW. I thought she was a good signing, but we know nothing about her character, and her matches have been no good. So Allie has not been doing jack shit. Leva Bates just sucks. The librarian gimmick sucks, but she's just not good in the ring at all. I think she's really overrated. People love oh my God, the librarian gimmick. She's so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. She does nothing for me. She really doesn't. They have a lot of attractive women on the roster. They don't need Leva Bates. She just doesn't really serve much of a purpose to me other than going in there and getting her ass kicked. Maybe that's her role. That's what she's done so far on the kickoff shows and on AEW Dark and stuff like that, on the pre-shows and on the buy-ins. But other than that, she's just been boring. She's just not good. I think they have a woman named Sadie Gibbs or Sadie Gibbs or something like that, who I've heard is really good, but she hasn't wrestled a single match for them. I think she was in that Battle Royal at All Out, but other than that, we have not seen her at all, and they signed her months ago. They need more women. I don't know who they can even recruit. I thought Tennille Dashwood would be perfect for that women's division, and she was in the All Out Battle Royal, despite being signed to Impact for the last couple of months now. But maybe Impact was offering her more money. I'm shocked she didn't go to AEW. I thought she could have been really the crown jewel of that division. Impact is great, but they already had a strong women's division. They don't really need Tennille. They already have Tessa, they have Taya, they have Kier Hogan, Madison Rayne, Jordan Grace. They have way more stars in their women's division than AEW does. Tessa Blanchard is a bigger star than anyone in that AEW women's division combined. That's how good she is. AEW needs someone like that to build around in that division. Britt Baker is very good, but I have yet to see one memorable match from her that was like, oh my God, that was a really good match. She's just not that good in the ring. So if Britt Baker is the best you got big issues. So what should they be doing with the women? First of all, let me know the characters. Tell me more about who these women are, what they're all about, what they represent. Putting them out there in random-ass matches is not going to make me give a fuck about these people. The matches aren't even that good. So if they want to make up for that, the least they can do is throw out a few vignettes or video packages on who these women are. Bea Priestley, who the fuck is she? Why should I care? Why should I care about Bea Priestley versus Britt Baker? I don't give a fuck. I really don't care. Have these women cut promos. Let me know who they are. Tell me about who they are. Make me care about these people. Other than that, just bringing in more talent. There's a lot of great female talent out there right now. And it's not a matter of cherry picking from WWE. Like Alicia Fox is reportedly done in WWE. She's not going to make a lick of a difference. I really hope they don't sign her. Dana Brooke, who gives a fuck? They're not good. WWE has a lot of good women. Like if Ember Moon left, she'd be a really good pickup for WWE or AEW or even a Sasha Banks, but at this point, I don't think she's leaving. It was in discussions months ago, what if she left for AEW? She's always been tweeting about them on Twitter for weeks now. It's not happening now. She recently resigned with the company, as had been reported. It's not going to happen. I don't even know. Impact has a lot of great women. They need Tessa Blanchard bad. AEW badly needs Tessa Blanchard. From Ring of Honor, there's not a lot of women. Kelly Klein would be good. Ring of Honor's women's division is even worse because they have no women right now. They had Maria Manic who debuted and had some buzz, but they never even signed her to a contract. Or even if they did, it recently expired. They didn't make an attempt to re-sign her, and now she had a WWE tryout. How the fuck does that happen? But anyway, yeah, the women's division is absolutely AEW's biggest Achilles heel, and they got to work on that going forward. His next question. So I met Shima, Amazing Red, and Matt Sydal at a recent indie show, which is something I never thought would happen. Are there any wrestlers that you've met that you never thought you'd be able to? That's a good question. First of all, that's really cool. I think I saw that picture. I'm not sure if I saw the picture of you with Amazing Red. That was probably Durbinator that I saw on Twitter, which was pretty cool. Actually, no, I think it was I think it was you, John. No, I don't remember. I forgot what the picture was, but I know it was definitely Durbinator. I think it was Matt Sydal was in there too. And maybe you were in there too, John. I don't remember, but I think that's awesome. Sheamus seems like a really nice guy, as does Amazing Red. Have never got the chance to meet either one of those individuals, but I did meet Matt Sydal after a Northeast Wrestling show 5 years ago. The main event, believe it or not, which was an amazing match on paper, and it lived up to the hype. It was Matt Taven versus Matt Sydal versus AJ Styles for the Northeast Wrestling Heavyweight Championship. Fucking great match. We had, the WWE champion as of a year ago, the Ring of Honor champion as of a few months ago, and then Matt Sydal, a former Impact X Division champion. And all three are amazing. It was a great match, but we were leaving the show. Matt Sydal was signing autographs for kids as he was walking out of the gymnasium, and John and I went up to him, not you, John Ritland, but my other friend, John. We went up to Matt, and we were like, hey, do you mind if I get a picture real quick? And he could not have been nicer. He's like one of the chillest, bros might be the best word to use, like a Matt Riddle. He gave that Matt Riddle vibe. He gave off the Matt Riddle vibe. And I met Matt Riddle years later in 2017, 2018. And he was really nice too. But he was a lot like Matt Riddle, where he just did not give a fuck. I was wearing my AJ Styles shirt, I think. And then I don't remember. I think I was wearing my AJ Styles shirt and then a CM Punk hat. And he was like, oh, man, you're wearing, merchandise for my two favorite wrestlers, AJ Styles and CM Punk. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. And then I was wearing, I had a Pepsi can in my hand that I was about to throw out, and he pretended to, spit in it like he was chewing tobacco. He was so fucking cool. But we got a picture with him. It's probably on my website. It's probably on nextdaywrestling.net. If you go to, the show from November of 2014 under event photos, I'm sure the picture's up there. He was really cool, though. But yeah, are there any wrestlers I've met that I never thought I'd be able to? Almost every single one I've probably ever met. Jericho, definitely. CM Punk, definitely. I mean, I'd always wanted to meet them. I never thought I would get the chance. At least, early on. In recent years, I've said to myself, listen, I'm going to do whatever it takes to meet X, Y, and Z. Christopher Lloyd was up there. CM Punk was up there. Chris Jericho was up there. Christian was up there. I think the people I've always wanted to meet the most were Christian, Jericho. In terms of wrestlers, Christian, Jericho, The Miz, Ryback, Zack Ryder, CM Punk, and William Regal. The only ones of that bunch I've yet to meet are The Miz and William Regal. William Regal, I almost had the chance a couple years ago, but it was at an Evolve show in Queens, New York. And I've been to that arena before, a few months before he was supposed to be there. But I had a wedding that day, and it snowed, a really bad snowstorm. So even if I didn't have a wedding to go to, I probably couldn't have gone anyway because the weather was so bad. But I'll meet him eventually, I'm sure. And then Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder I got a chance to meet earlier this year. And I've been a big fan of his for 10 years now. So to get to meet him earlier this year was really cool. I wore my Matt Riddle shirt, ironically enough, for the bro stuff. And he thought that was funny, but he was really cool too. But yeah, CM Punk would probably lead that list. Again, in the last couple of years, I've always told myself, I'm going to do whatever it takes to meet CM Punk. He's been one of, if not the biggest influence on my life, moreover, than anyone else. And say what you will about Punk, and that's fine, and everyone has their own opinions of CM Punk. But he's been one of my favorites and one of my biggest inspirational idols now for close to 8-9 years. That to meet him was going to be invaluable no matter what. But just everything aligned with All Out Weekend in Chicago 2 months ago in August, and Alexis and I were able to go. We didn't even go to the show itself. We weren't even at All Out. We were just there for CM Punk because I knew that opportunity may never present itself again to meet CM Punk because, yeah, he'll appear at the occasional, he'll appear at the occasional Comic-Con and stuff like that, but usually his appearances aren't announced until a few weeks out. And by that point, it's way too difficult to get a plane ticket or to take the time off to go to Chicago to go meet him. So he was announced a month and a half ahead of All Out Weekend. So it worked out perfectly with us able to go and plan and meet him. And it was the most amazing wrestler experience I've ever had in my entire life. Meeting a wrestler, hands down the best experience I've ever had. And it's right up there with Matt Hardy because Matt Hardy is high up on that list too. He was always one of my favorites. And to meet him now 5 or 6 times. I think I've met him maybe 6 times now. I met him once in 2012, once in 2014, twice in 2015, once in 2016, and then once last year too. And all these different times, one of these times he was with Ring of Honor, one of these times he was with Impact, one of these times he was with WWE. He was on the independent scene, not doing much. So it was cool. It was really, really cool. But yeah, so CM Punk would have to lead that list. Outside of wrestling, someone I never thought I would meet, I mentioned him before, Christopher Lloyd. And we recently celebrated Back to the Future Day, I think on Monday, actually, on the 21st of October. The day they go to the future in 2015, that was on Monday. So I got the chance to meet Christopher Lloyd 2 years ago at Rhode Island Comic-Con. And it was announced, and I was going anyway because Batista was going to be there and I really wanted to meet Batista. I found out about Christopher Lloyd maybe, it was either a month ahead of time or like a couple weeks ahead of time. It was before we were going to go. And I freaked the fuck out when I read about it on Twitter. I saw it online or something like that. And I was in class when I read that Christopher Lloyd was going to be at Rhode Island Comic-Con. I almost let out an audible holy shit. And I was freaking out in my chair, trying to pay attention to whatever the fuck the teacher was talking about. But I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I got a chance to meet him. No issues, no mix-ups. It's not like he wasn't there or he ran late or whatever. He was right there. He was the first person I met at Rhode Island Comic-Con that day. And he was so cool. He was so cool. And I posted the picture on my Instagram the other day of the experience. And I had the video, too, that I got to share. I might have already posted it, but my brother took a video that I might still have somewhere. But anyway, so that I had the chance to meet Christopher Lloyd that day. I dressed up as Doc Brown from 2015. It was so fucking cool. I never, ever thought. He was one of those people like, oh, yeah, I would love to meet Christopher Lloyd. Like, I know it's never going to happen, but it would be cool. And then when I found out he was going to be there, I was never actively searching for Christopher Lloyd. Like, oh, like I'll look up every Comic-Con that he might be appearing at. I never went out of my way to look up, where he might be showing up next at any Comic-Cons and stuff like that. So to find out that he was going to be at this Comic-Con that I was going to be at, that I was going to be in attendance for, was unreal. Like you could not match the enthusiasm I had in that moment when I found out he would be there. And it was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. And then to be able to meet Batista a little later on that day was also amazing. It was one of the coolest days ever. And I got to meet Christian that same day too. Another inspirational idol of mine. And Howard Finkel, which was also cool. But yeah, Christopher Lloyd, I know that's not a wrestler, but he'd probably be even higher up on that list than CM Punk in terms of people I never thought I would meet, but I did. Because again, I thought like he's almost 80 now. He probably is 80. He's up there, and I'm like, there's no chance. No way I'll ever get to meet Christopher Lloyd. And then I did, and I'm like, wow, like that's fucking crazy. So probably Christopher Lloyd would be my my answer to you. Next question comes from Matt Jeremy 8911. And by the way, before we go any further, I have no idea why my voice is so raspy today. I actually had to stop recording a minute ago just to take a drink of water because my voice is just shot for some reason. I don't know why. I wasn't at a wrestling show last night. I wasn't at a concert. It's just really, it just shit today for some reason. So again, I apologize in advance for that, but it's just giving me issues. There always seems to be an issue here on the show every week, whether it's running short or my voice isn't working. I don't know why, but anyway, his question was, do you think WWE should have Humberto Carrillo be AJ Styles for the United States Championship and feud with Andrade over it? That's a good question. I thought Carrillo made a very good first impression on Monday's Raw against Rollins. It was a good match. They worked well together. It looked like he was scouting Andrade, so I'm not really sure where they're going with that, whether it's a match next week or a feud or a tag team. I don't really know. But, there's a lot of people AJ could lose the title to. It could be Carrillo. It wouldn't be a bad choice. I would go Aleister Black. I think Aleister Black might need it more. He's been winning a lot lately. He's been getting over. To kind of continue that momentum that he currently has, beating someone like an AJ for that title would lend a lot of credibility to a guy like Aleister Black. And the matches could be amazing. I'm not saying Carrillo and AJ wouldn't be amazing. It would also be really, really fun, but for some reason, I just see Black being that guy to take the title from AJ. Or Buddy Murphy. That'd be really cool, too. Carrillo, Not a bad idea, but I think you can do the Carrillo-Andrade feud without the United States Championship. Because there's history built in there too, and you can kind of play off the Hispanic culture, and, you got here before I did, blah, blah, blah. Maybe incorporate jealousy in there somewhere. You don't really need the United States Championship for a feud like that, because I doubt that Carrillo beats AJ and then loses it right to Andrade. And Andrade needs the title too, so I don't see that happening. But a Carrillo-Andrade feud would be a lot of fun, and I would love to see AJ eventually drop that championship to Aleister Black. At Iwagoo from Twitter's got a couple questions here. First question being, do you think that Kota Ibushi was the MVP of the Cruiserweight Classic? Yeah, I would say so. There were a lot of people that had some great performances. I mean, Cedric was in there for like 2 matches. He was only in there for 2 rounds, but he fucking killed it. The first match was fine, but that second match with Kota Ibushi was one of the best matches all year. Kota Ibushi had some really good matches in that tournament with Cedric Alexander, Sean Maluda, I think he faced in that first round, Brian Kendrick, TJ Perkins, and maybe someone else if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Kota Ibushi was maybe not far and away the MVP of that tournament, but because they had a lot of people who did really, really well, like Cedric, like Brian Kendrick, like Zack Sabre Jr., TJP, Grand Metalik. A lot of people had some really good performances throughout that tournament. But yeah, specifically Kota Ibushi shined in every single match he had. His second question here, if the Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish interfere tomorrow night, talking about tonight, of course, to help Roderick Strong retain the NXT North American Championship, suppose either Keith Lee or Dominik Dijakovic team up to deal with Fish and O'Reilly, or will they deal with Undisputed Era inside WarGames next month? So he's asking, will we see Lee and Dominik Dijakovic form a tag team, whether it be for the World Tag Team titles or inside WarGames? I like either possibility, to be honest with you. I'm not sure whether they're going to do a men's WarGames or a women's WarGames. I'll talk more about that momentarily. RJ asked a question similar to that. Either one would be great, and I'll talk more about that momentarily. But if they don't do the men's WarGames, Lee and Dijakovic versus Undisputed Era would make a lot of sense. Because now I guess with the match with Strong, they could tie that into them feuding with Undisputed Era. It's not like they're going to be having another match against each other anytime soon. They've already had 4 matches since March, which is a lot. So I wouldn't do a 5th match anytime soon. And there's no obvious contenders for those tag titles right now in NXT. Lorcan and Birch are there, but they just lost to Imperium. I guess you could do Imperium, but it's heel versus heel. I think Lee and Dijakovic could work. For as much as they hate each other, they could put their differences aside and become an amazing tag team. So I really, really like that idea. So I would go with Lee and Dijakovic as tag team title contenders versus Fish and O'Reilly at the next TakeOver. His next question, what is your anticipation level for NXT and AEW Dynamite tonight? Looking forward to both shows. I think what we've usually done, Alexis and I, what we've usually done is that we'll watch one and then the other right afterward. So for the first 2 weeks, the first week we watched Dynamite first because it was the premiere episode of Dynamite. Then we watched NXT afterward. The next week we were at Dynamite, so we didn't watch NXT till Thursday night. And then last week we watched NXT first and then Dynamite right afterward. But this week we can't watch one after the other. We have to watch them either simultaneously somehow, like one on our iPad and then one on the TV, or we'll just watch the other one tomorrow. So that being said, of the two, which one would I like to watch first? Probably NXT, to be honest with you, probably just for that 3-way of Lee, Dijakovic, and Strong, because that could be an amazing match. Dynamite should be good too. We have Omega and Janela. Cody Rhodes will be cutting a promo on Chris Jericho and the rest of the Inner Circle. We'll have Pac and Moxley. That should be great. I think Private Party versus Lucha Bros, if I'm not mistaken. That should also be amazing. And then I think Dark Order versus SCU. So it should be a really good show as well. And wrestling has been at its best on Wednesdays. Tuesdays are quickly catching up, but Wednesdays are the wrestling night. Wednesdays are great between Dynamite and NXT. It's hard to go wrong with either show right now. At Hardy DX Fan, his question was, who in their peak/prime was a better wrestler? CM Punk, Shawn Michaels, or Daniel Bryan? Man, that's a great question. Definitely not CM Punk, because if we're talking just in-ring ability, the guy was great, but he was nowhere near as good as Daniel Bryan or Shawn Michaels. So of those two, I gotta go Shawn. The guy has just had better Daniel Bryan was at his peak even before he showed up in WWE, and it was on a much smaller scale, so it's hard to say. But I feel like Shawn was able to bring the best out of just anybody. When he was at his peak in the mid-90s, he had amazing matches with Bret Hart, fucking Diesel, who was not that great, but they had some great matches. Mankind, Psycho Sid, they had a great match at Survivor Series 1996. He had those Match of the Year contenders with The Undertaker a few years, 10 years ago, then again, or previously in 97, 98. They had great matches, Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I've got to go Shawn Michaels. Daniel Bryan is up there. He's definitely one of the best wrestlers this business has ever seen. But Michaels has got to be up there, has got to lead the list. In terms of all-around performers, but specifically in terms of in-ring ability, was one of the best, if not the best, to ever lace up a pair of boots. The guy was that good. So I got to go Shawn Michaels. At Brad Berdar from Twitter, why has NXT opted to not put these Dominik Dijakovic versus Keith Lee matches on a takeover yet? Just because the timing has not been right. I would have loved to have seen their first match or the rematch at TakeOver New York, but I think one of them got hurt, and then when they were going to continue to do the feud over the summer, the other one got hurt. I think Dijakovic got hurt, or Keith Lee got hurt first, and then Dijakovic. So they couldn't do the match at any one of these takeovers, which sucked. The timing just wasn't right, but they could do a version of it at WarGames in a couple weeks, in a month from now. If, as I said earlier, according to at Iwagu, which I agree with, 91, they could have Lee and Dijakovic face Fish and O'Reilly. Now, they may not be facing each other one-on-one, but as a tag team, it might be just as good, if not better. That would be amazing. At RG_Marceau, Mr. Marceau from the Twitter machine, his question was, thoughts on the potential of an NXT Women's WarGames match? We've heard a lot of talk about this. RJ texted me about it last week. Of the two, what would I want to see? The men's WarGames, which would probably be Undisputed Era versus Ciampa, Balor, Lee, and Dijakovic. I guess you could throw an Imperium, but that's a lot of people. I'd probably just keep it to those 8. That would be a great match, but if it's not them, if it would probably be the woman. If it was the women, it would be the 4 horsewomen, that being, probably a 3-way, similar to what we saw 2 years ago with the men. It would be Shayna, Jessamine Duke, and Marina Shafir versus Candice, what are their names? Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox, and then Rhea Ripley, Io Shirai, and Bianca Belair. That would be the match. I would probably want to see that match more, because this might be as good of a time as any to do a women's WarGames match. We may never get this type of division for NXT again, where it's as good right now as it has ever been, if not better. So I would do that match. The men's match would be amazing too, don't get me wrong. They can't do 2, I think that's overkill. But the women's one, I think, just makes more sense with how many feuds Shayna has going right now. And I think that's the match they should do. Come take over at WarGames. Do that 3-way tag team match inside WarGames with the women. I think that'd be amazing. His next question, what is AEW's obsession with hand biting? Seems like a majority of the matches that they do feature it. I don't know. Yeah, it seems like a lot of Jimmy Havoc's matches feature it, and some other people. It's not, overdone, but there is a lot of it in AEW for some reason. I'm not sure why. Again, it's the same thing that goes with anything. The more they do of it, it's just not going to be creative or original or as effective as it is right now. I would just not do it as much, or just not do it at all. I don't really see what the point is. If you want to do it with someone like Jungle Boy, who's supposed to be like an animal, I guess that makes sense, but with like Jimmy Havoc, I just think it's stupid. They got to kind of cut back on that. At noob_n_co1991, his first question was, which wrestling promotion will Kylie Ray go to now that she's not with AEW? I would assume with Impact. She's made a few appearances with them in the last couple of weeks. She wrestled for them, I think, over Bound for Glory weekend, and then she was at Bound for Glory itself in that Battle Royal that kicked off the show. The Call Your Shot Battle Royal, she was in it. So I would assume she goes to Impact, and honestly, it's not a bad choice, just because Impact has a great women's division right now. The only thing is, like, why leave AEW and not go back? Because I would assume when she left that she would have, she would, not have left on bad terms, and that the door would be open for her to return. So I'm not sure why she would go to Impact over AEW, but if it's not AEW, Impact would probably be as good of a place as any for her to go. I mean, I guess she can go to WWE, but I don't really see the gimmick working there, and she is good, but I don't really want to see her in WWE. I think she was offered a deal to go to WWE years ago, like a few months ago, I think, right? I think she was offered a deal to go to WWE and she turned them down. So I think she would go to Impact. Ring of Honor's women's division is nearly non-existent. So Impact would be a good landing place for her. Their second question, which DLC are you most excited for in WWE 2K20 and what features do you want to see? I think with the DLC, you probably already knew this, but they're not doing like, oh, this guy didn't make the cut for the roster, so they're going to be in DLC. They're not doing that this year. The DLC for the game is like alternate arenas, like Southpaw, regional wrestling. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, they should be putting Walter in the game, Dijakovic, Kushida, Leo Rush. Not these fucking arenas. Who cares? So I thought that was a little weird. I'll talk more about the game momentarily, but yeah, I guess that's what the DLC is all about, and I'm not really excited for any of that. They're not going to be including people that should be in the game already. At Brett Bullet 10 from Twitter, his first question was, could you see Rey Mysterio and Cain Velasquez as tag team champions by WrestleMania? I didn't even really think about that, but that's not a bad idea. I mean, Cain would have to go to Raw for that to happen. I mean, I guess they could put Rey back on SmackDown, but they just drafted him to Raw. So I would like to see them stick with that for a change and keep the guy on Raw if they were going to fucking draft him there. But if they're not on separate shows, I would like to think that Fox would want Cain on SmackDown. I guess he could go to Raw, but Raw's already stacked. They don't really need him. I think it makes more sense to be on SmackDown if he's going to be a full-time guy. But anyway, assuming they were on the same show, them as tag team champions is not a bad idea. I think that works. I do think it works just because after the obvious Kane-Brock match at Crown Jewel, what do you do with Kane? Rey Mysterio's not doing a hell of a whole lot right now. They are continuing Rey Mysterio's involvement in the angle, even though he's on Raw and not SmackDown with Brock and the rest of the guys. But yeah, I mean, I don't see that happening per se, but is it a bad idea? Not at all. His next question, is Brian Cage one of the most disappointing champions in recent memory? I mean, he's not really disappointing just because it's not his fault. I mean, the guy got hurt literally the night he won the championship. He broke his neck. And he's wrestled only a handful of matches since then. He got ready. He got cleared to compete at Slammiversary. And he was either hurt again or he still was not 100%. So he had to go back on the injury reserve list and came back to the ring at Bound for Glory weekend at Bound for Glory. It was one of his first matches back with Sammy. They had a great match over the Impact World Championship. And he retained. I was surprised. But they could do the title change next week. I was a little surprised that Sammy didn't win. But next week's match is inside a steel cage. So I'm like, maybe they're saving it for their first big show on Access, which would make sense. I guess we'll find out on Tuesday. But it's not that he's disappointing. It is a shame that he got hurt and he's been out for the better part of his reign as Impact World Champion. There really is no reason for him to hold the championship. I mean, he never really got a fair shake at being champion, which sucks. But I think Sammy's the hotter star right now in Impact. He should be champion, and I assume he will win it come next Tuesday on Impact on Access TV. Brett's third question here. Is Okada one of the greatest champions of this generation based on his matches and the way he carries himself? 100%. Absolutely. I don't think his most recent reign has been anything special, just because I can't really remember any great matches he's had, and I don't really follow the product too closely, but I follow it enough to know, wow, this guy just had a great match. I should check it out. He hasn't really had many of those matches so far in AEW. He had, him and Jericho, or not AEW, in New Japan as the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. I know he faced Jericho back in maybe June, I want to say. But that's the only Okada match I remember, the only really good Okada match I remember him having since he won the title back in April. He won the championship then, and I was like, oh, okay, that's great. And he never really did much with the championship after that, I guess. But yeah, other than his most recent reign, I mean, he was champion for like a solid 2 years a few years ago. The matches with Omega alone were some of the greatest of all time. The matches with Tanahashi were some of the greatest of all time. He had great matches with, what's his name? The guy that he faced at Wrestle Kingdom in 2018. I don't remember. His name is on the tip of my tongue, and it's going to bother me until... Naito. He faced Naito at Wrestle Kingdom last year, and it was a really, really good match. So yeah, absolutely, Okada is one of the greatest champions, probably not only of his generation, but just of all time in wrestling. Based off, again, how he feels like a big deal, he feels like a champion, the matches alone are amazing. Not really sure about his promo skills, but everything else, he's the complete package. The guy's a star. So yeah, definitely one of the greatest champions in not only of his generation, but just of all time. And we'll close it out with these 3 questions from @Scarlet1 from Twitter. Their first question was, have you heard about the reception for WWE 2K20? It's notable for that being the first WWE game to be solely developed by 2K's visual concepts team with no input from Yuke's, the team behind the SmackDown vs. Raw series, and who co-developed the previous 2K games. Yeah, I have heard all about the backlash from fans about 2K20 and how it's not been good. I've seen all the glitches and botches and shit like that online. It just looks terrible. There's nothing about the game that makes me want to get it, and hearing about all the malfunctions and the glitches and shit like that, I've seen more about that for this game than any other installment in the history of the video game. And I have not been a big video game guy in years, but I would still get the games. I would still play them. I still enjoyed them. But I think I got last year's game. I never got last year's game, and I just never really felt like I missed anything. And the same thing with this game. I have no desire to buy this game. If someone buys it for me on like PC, and my brother has an Xbox, but I don't really play Xbox. I don't like the controls. PC would be cool. But unless someone buys it for me, I'm not going to go out of my way to get it. Just because the game looks like it's shit, it has a lot of issues, and it's just, the graphics look terrible. I mean, it's 2019, and the graphics look way worse than they've ever been. Probably worse than the old SmackDown games 10 years ago. The SmackDown vs. Raw series. So, I don't know if that was the fact that Yuke's pulled out or what the hell happened, but it's not good. It's not good. The game looks like it's terrible. Best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars, number 3. Not a lot of worst, but the best from both Dynamite and NXT. First from Dynamite, Jericho and Darby Allin, very good main event last week. Paige Omega versus Jon Moxley and Pac, great tag team match. One of my favorite, probably my favorite match in the entire show. Really liked Lucha Bros versus Jurassic Express. I'm not a big Marco Stunt fan, but the match itself was a lot of fun. And then from NXT, Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch versus Imperium. Very fun tag team match. Keith Lee versus Dominic Dijakovic. Can't go wrong with their chemistry. Great match. And then Pete Dunne and Damian Priest had the best match of the entire week, I thought, in WWE. They had a great match in NXT. The only worst things about the shows, I thought, first from Dynamite, Riho and Britt Baker. I talked about that earlier. The match was just weak. Not a real good match at all for the AEW Women's Championship. It was fine, but it really was not that good. Not as good as it could have been, I'll say. Britt Baker really needs to turn heel. And then from NXT, not that this is like a major offense or anything, but Killian Dane versus Boa, I just could not care less. Boa just got beat in like 10 seconds by Cameron Grimes the week before, yet it took Killian Dane like 5 to beat Boa here. So I thought that was weird, and I like Killian Dane, but the match just did nothing for me. But other than that, I thought the shows were great, and I am looking forward to tonight's episodes. And finally, have you heard about New Japan Pro Wrestling's launching of a new U.S. subsidiary? I did hear that the other day, which is really cool. It was coming off of rumors that NXT was looking to develop an NXT Japan brand. So then New Japan countered that by opening up their own dojo or wrestling school or whatever, subsidiary, like you said, in the U.S., which is just hilarious. It's basically the equivalent of what WWE has over in the U.K. with the U.K. Performance Center. New Japan is branching off into the States with their U.S. subsidiary. So I think that's great. Hopefully that means more U.S. shows. They've toured the U.S. a few times over the years, but not nearly as much as they should. I know attendance isn't at an all-time high or anything, but I've heard the shows are really good, and I would love to attend one of these days. I mean, I was at the G1 Supercard show, but I'm talking like solely New Japan. But yeah, I did hear about that. It's really, really cool, and hopefully it works out, and New Japan can gain more exposure over here in the States. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 308 of #AskGSM here today for October 23rd, 2019. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. If you want to support the show, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. We'll be back next week with another all-new installment of #AskGSM. Until then, guys, I'm GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.